Sunlight glared off the steel and glass security entrance. Ethan, a single dad working as a gatekeeper, monitored the ID scanner, his posture calm and steady. CEO Cassandra Vance approached with a delegation of engineers, all visibly impatient. The scanner flashed a critical temporary access error. Cassandra sneered, speaking just loud enough for the team to hear. "Just a gatekeeper?" Laughter rippled through the delegation. Ethan calmly requested confirmation protocols. A furious manager, Mr. Jennings, stepped close, invading Ethan's space to exert pressure. Instantly, Ethan shifted. In a silent, lightning-fast move, the entire opposing team froze, their movements instantly neutralized. The whole area fell into an unnerving silence. Ethan Thorne had willingly chosen the role of a gatekeeper, a position often characterized by its minimal stature and procedural monotony. To the sprawling multi-billion-dollar technology corporation, he was nothing more than a piece of low-level security hardware paid to operate a scanner and log entries. He had zero voice in the organizational structure, his title carrying no weight beyond the 3-foot boundary of his security booth. He was a single father who had traded a life of high stakes, intense pressure for one of predictable early morning routines. His daily mission was simple: stability for his daughter, safety for the compound, and absolute adherence to protocol. His past, however, was written in a language of rigorous discipline and specialized training. Ethan was not just a security officer. He was a former high-ranking field operative and conflict de-escalation instructor for an elite government unit, a past he guarded with extreme prejudice. He carried the quiet weight of thousands of hours spent in simulated life-or-death scenarios where precision and restraint were the only currency. His hands, now used to holding a pen and an ID badge, possessed the muscle memory of neutralizing threats without collateral damage. A severe personal crisis, the sudden, life-threatening injury of his daughter, had forced him to make a dramatic retreat. He needed the steady, low-stress, predictable environment that allowed him to manage hospital visits and school runs. The gatekeeper role was his carefully constructed sanctuary, providing a modest but guaranteed income, and crucially, a complete detachment from the corporate political battlefield he had once effortlessly navigated. He kept his principles rigidly intact: safety first, procedure second, and respect for the system above all else. His quiet demeanor and meticulous adherence to the rulebook were often misinterpreted as passive compliance or worse, incompetence. His personal signature was his manual logbook, a small dark journal where he meticulously recorded every shift change, every anomalous code, and every visitor discrepancy, all written by hand. In a building saturated with advanced digital logging and AI-driven monitoring, his physical, detailed notes were seen as an endearing, if inefficient, eccentricity. The CEO, Cassandra Vance, was the complete opposite of Ethan's methodical quiet. She led a corporation defined by its speed, efficiency, and aggressive growth. She lived for the shortcut, the expedited process, the immediate result. To Cassandra, procedural protocol was often viewed as a bureaucratic vestige, a necessary evil to be navigated, bypassed, or crushed if it impeded progress. She was impatient with anything that couldn't be instantly optimized. Her mind constantly justified her actions. If we are not faster than our competitors, we die. And slowness always originates at the bottom of the hierarchy. This ingrained impatience made Ethan, the gatekeeper, a frequent target of her low-grade scorn. Cassandra had often passed through his security checkpoint, always rushing, always annoyed by the fractional delay imposed by the system. She rarely acknowledged his existence, seeing him only as the physical embodiment of the red tape she despised. To her, he was just a gatekeeper, a man with no ambition, no power, and therefore no real value in her high-octane corporate world. She was surrounded by yes-men, people who jumped at her every command, and Ethan's quiet, steadfast refusal to bend the rules for convenience grated on her nerves. She instinctively felt that anyone in such a lowly position must inherently lack the drive and intelligence required for success. The incident that was about to unfold was a direct result of Cassandra's fundamental lack of respect for the frontline staff. The delegation accompanying her included Senior Manager Jennings, a man notorious for his aggressive, bullying tactics and his constant need to demonstrate authority, particularly over subordinates. Neither Cassandra nor Jennings, nor anyone in the highly competitive, results-driven engineering team had any inkling of Ethan's true capabilities. They saw a tired single dad doing a dead-end job. They were about to learn that the most dangerous man in any room is often the one who is calmest, the one who possesses the highest level of discipline, and the one who is only holding the line for the simplest, most profound reason: principle. The temporary access error couldn't have occurred at a worse moment. The delegation was rushing to a high-priority meeting involving a sensitive, prototype technology that required immediate security clearance. The digital scanner at the fortified gate flashed a persistent, angry red, a temporary anomaly in the authentication server. Cassandra, already running late, felt a spike of frustration. She slammed her hand on the console next to the scanner, the sound echoing sharply in the enclosed security area. "Thorn, fix this, now!" she commanded, her voice edged with impatience. "We don't have time for your archaic system errors. Override it. Use your internal code." She looked at her lead engineers, silently demanding solidarity in her dismissal of the gatekeeper. This is why we invest in AI, she thought, to eliminate the human factor of delay. Ethan didn't look up immediately. He was already running the diagnostic check, meticulously cross-referencing the scanner's log against his handwritten notes. His refusal to immediately break protocol was immediate and unwavering. "Madam CEO, the system has flagged a level 3 anomaly. I cannot manually override. That is a security violation and voids insurance. I've initiated contact with Central Security for a remote patch. ETA is 90 seconds. 90 seconds? Are you joking?" Cassandra stepped forward, looming over his booth. "I have a delegation of 10 engineers who need to enter a secured zone immediately. The delay is costing us thousands a minute. Open the gate, Gatekeeper." The emphasis on his title was deliberate, a verbal slap. She felt a toxic combination of professional pressure and personal irritation. It was Manager Jennings who escalated the situation physically. Already eager to impress the CEO with his decisiveness, Jennings saw Ethan's adherence to protocol as a weakness to be exploited. His rage was stoked by the public delay. "Listen to the CEO, Thorn," Jennings barked, stepping directly into Ethan's personal space, his face inches from the gatekeeper's. His voice was a low snarl. "You're jeopardizing a critical project over a glorified network hiccup. You're paid to open doors, not to be a roadblock." Jennings placed a heavy, intimidating hand on the counter, leaning in. "Do your job, or I will ensure you don't have one tomorrow." The threat was clear, aggressive, and designed to intimidate. The atmosphere tightened instantly. The air grew heavy, almost metallic. The low-level hum of the security system seemed to amplify the tension. The other engineers, though uncomfortable, watched in silence, expecting the low-ranking officer to wilt under the immense pressure. Ethan, however, remained utterly unruffled. He finished his note in the logbook, then slowly, deliberately pushed his chair back and stood up, placing himself squarely between Jennings and the main console. He had not broken eye contact. "Sir, you are invading a restricted workspace," Ethan stated, his voice a low, steady baritone that carried a surprising weight. "I have advised the CEO of the required procedure. I cannot open the gate until the level 3 anomaly clears." He then performed a subtle, barely noticeable shift in posture. His feet widened slightly, his shoulders relaxed, and his hands came up, not clenched, but open, to a natural, neutral position at his sides. This was the posture of maximum stability and readiness, a subtle warning entirely missed by the uninitiated. Jennings scoffed, mistaking the calm for cowardice. He interpreted the slight widening of the feet as preparing to back away. His blood was boiling. He needed to assert his dominance. "I'm giving you a direct order, Thorn. Move!" He aggressively reached out to shove Ethan aside and attempt a manual entry of his own keycard. It was a direct physical threat, a blatant attempt at assault and protocol violation. He genuinely believed Ethan would fold. The change in Ethan was immediate and breathtaking. He was not reacting. He was controlling the outcome. He was anticipating. The preemptive movement that had been trained out of instinct and into pure discipline was now on display. In the fraction of a second it took for Jennings's hand to traverse the distance between them, Ethan's defense was complete. It was a fluid, utterly economical movement, a slight lateral step to shift his weight, a brief, sharp inhale that steadied his core, and a minimalist deflection. He didn't punch, kick, or engage in any aggressive action. Instead, he simply intercepted Jennings's wrist with the side of his palm, using his thumb to find the precise pressure point that redirected the manager's momentum. This turned his aggressive forward lunge into a harmless, rotational spin. Jennings, a man 30 pounds heavier and fueled by adrenaline, suddenly found himself unbalanced. Facing the opposite direction, his aggressive reach turned into a clumsy, embarrassing pivot. Ethan had used Jennings's own momentum and anger against him, leveraging physics and anatomy over brute force. The execution was clean, decisive, and entirely nonviolent. Jennings was not injured, but he was completely immobilized. His arm was held in a light, non-damaging, but inescapably firm grip that rendered him instantly harmless. He was frozen in a posture of bewildered helplessness, locked out of further conflict. The entire incident lasted less than 2 seconds, but it was enough to silence the entire delegation. The other engineers froze, their initial amusement and impatience replaced by shock bordering on fear. They hadn't witnessed a fight. They had witnessed a masterclass in physical control and de-escalation, the effortless application of superior skill to neutralize aggression. They suddenly realized they were standing in front of a man who was not only willing to defend his procedure, but was fundamentally capable of defending himself and the facility against any threat. The laughter died instantly and completely. The tension that had been crackling in the air was replaced by a rigid, terrified awe. The gatekeeper hadn't just stopped an attack. He had instantly established unassailable physical authority without raising his voice or causing a single scratch. Jennings's heavy breathing was the only sound, a pathetic counterpoint to Ethan's quiet competence. The silence that followed Ethan's intervention was total, a heavy, ringing silence broken only by the rhythmic clicking of the card scanner. Manager Jennings, still awkwardly held in a non-painful but completely controlled position, was breathing heavily, his face crimson with embarrassment and shock. The sudden burst of adrenaline now giving way to cold, clammy fear. The rest of the delegation stared, unable to process the speed, the precision, and the terrifying calm of the security officer. Ethan slowly released Jennings's arm, stepping back into his original position with a seamless return to neutrality. The movement was so fluid it looked like a replay of the manager's own aborted advance. Jennings stumbled slightly, retreating instantly to the safety of the group, rubbing his wrist, completely subdued, his earlier arrogance shattered. "The rules are in place for the security of the personnel, sir," Ethan stated, his voice devoid of any triumph, remaining the calm professional. "Physical interference with a security officer performing protocol is a violation. I intervened to prevent a further breach and potential injury." Then came twist 1, the revelation. Cassandra, her shock replaced by a cold, forensic curiosity, recognized the specific nature of the movement. She didn't recognize a chaotic self-defense move. She recognized a highly structured technique, an almost clinical application of force designed to contain, not harm. "That wasn't self-defense, Thorne," she challenged, her voice low, penetrating the silence. "That was textbook de-escalation restraint. I've seen training videos for specialized units that teach that exact reversal. Where did you learn that level of control?" Her mind raced, calculating the cost of the training required to achieve such effortless mastery. Ethan paused, a flicker of his past crossing his eyes before he settled back into his gatekeeper persona. He spoke slowly, revealing only what was necessary for the context of his job. "I was an instructor," he admitted. "For 10 years, I trained tactical response teams in non-lethal immobilization and rapid de-escalation techniques. My specialty was conflict control and preventing escalation in high-value restricted environments. I taught the doctrine that physical force is only used to establish distance and restore compliance, never to punish or injure." He had been the one who taught people like Jennings how to handle pressure. The irony was palpable. He hadn't been an ordinary guard. He was the master of the precise discipline they had all just violated. His calm was not a lack of emotion. It was the ultimate application of learned discipline. The engineers exchanged horrified whispers. Instructor? Tactical teams? The man they had laughed at moments ago was a ghost of high-level government expertise, choosing to spend his days opening and closing a simple security gate. Their contempt instantly evaporated, replaced by genuine, unadulterated respect for the quiet power he possessed. They understood that Ethan had intentionally used the minimum necessary force, a deliberate, powerful kindness that saved Jennings from a painful injury and a massive professional reprimand. He controlled the damage, both physical and professional. Just then, the security console beeped, a soft, successful tone. The remote patch was complete. The scanner light turned from red to a steady, solid green. Access confirmed, Ethan announced. The transition from conflict expert to compliant gatekeeper instantaneous. He pressed the button, and the heavy turnstile clicked open, inviting the delegation through. "Welcome to the restricted area, Madam CEO. Your clearance is verified." The delegation, humbled and cowed, began to file through. Cassandra, however, remained rooted to the spot, her eyes blazing with questions and a burning sense of cognitive dissonance. She allowed the engineers to pass, creating a small, intensely private space between her and Ethan. She was the picture of corporate efficiency, yet she had been utterly defeated, not by external competition or a technological failure, but by a principle she had carelessly dismissed. She had been forced to wait for 90 seconds, only to witness her own aggressive authority figure humiliated by the very man she belittled. Her focus shifted from the lost time to the potential catastrophe averted. If Ethan hadn't been there, Jennings would have likely attempted to force entry, potentially causing facility damage or requiring a much more aggressive response from backup security. "Why?" she demanded, her voice barely a whisper, echoing her earlier question to the mechanic in the prior crisis. "If you possess that level of skill, that level of disciplined training, why are you here, checking ID cards? And why didn't you inform us of your qualifications 4 hours ago when the access first went down and we could have mitigated the delay?" Her question was the essence of her corporate worldview. Why are you not performing at your highest market value? Why choose obscurity when you can have power? Ethan looked at the CEO, not with defiance, but with a deep, quiet pity for her tunnel vision, the kind of pity reserved for the highly successful who have forgotten simple human truths. He understood that her value system was entirely based on appearance and rank. This was twist 2. The emotional counterstrike. Ethan delivered his answer, his voice calm, clear, and focused entirely on the truth of his current role. "My job is to prevent problems, not impress," he stated, the words cutting through the corporate noise like a surgical blade. "The system failed, not the procedure. I am here to uphold the standard, regardless of who is asking me to break it. My value is measured by the lack of incident, Madam CEO, not the visibility of my action." The simple, profound declaration hung in the air. My job is to prevent problems, not impress. It was a devastating indictment of her entire leadership culture, which revolved around performance, showmanship, and the constant need for validation through title and authority. Ethan had chosen to be the silent guardian, the man who cared only about the integrity of the gate, not the glory of his actions. He had deliberately minimized himself to maximize the effectiveness of the security protocol. He was the embodiment of silent competence, a concept completely foreign to the delegation that prioritized loud ambition. Cassandra finally understood the profound danger of her own arrogance. Her contempt for the low-level title had created a dangerous blind spot, nearly leading to a physical altercation and a serious security breach. She had risked the safety of her personnel and the integrity of her facility because she couldn't tolerate 90 seconds of delay imposed by a man whose dedication to the rules was absolute. The power in the area had completely shifted. It no longer belonged to the CEO and her title, but to the gatekeeper and his unyielding discipline. The delegation, listening to the final exchange, now understood that the most powerful force in the company was not the corner office, but the ethical spine of the man standing in front of them. Cassandra stood for a long time, watching the empty turnstile, the weight of Ethan's words settling upon her like a physical mantle. She was confronted not just with her mistake, but with a fundamental flaw in her corporate philosophy. She realized she had been prioritizing efficiency over security and flash over substance. The 90 seconds of delay had purchased the company a lifetime of security insight. She raised her hand, signaling the delegation to stop just inside the restricted area. They turned, expecting a reprimand for their lack of support or their lateness. Instead, they watched as Cassandra walked back to the security booth, stopped before Ethan, and did something utterly foreign to her nature. She apologized publicly. "Mr. Thorne," she began, her voice carefully modulated, public but sincere. "I apologize for my contemptuous attitude and for allowing Manager Jennings to escalate the situation. Your adherence to protocol, despite the immense pressure, was correct. Your capability to neutralize the threat was exemplary. I was wrong to diminish your position and ignore the essential function of your duty." Ethan accepted the apology with a simple nod, never breaking his calm posture. He didn't gloat, he didn't elaborate on the manager's failure, and he didn't seek recognition. He simply returned to monitoring the surveillance feeds, his professionalism intact. He was not interested in credit. He was only interested in the smooth continuation of his assigned duties. His lack of personal agenda amplified the sincerity of his commitment to the rules. The rest of the technical team, watching this unprecedented scene unfold, the CEO of the company humbling herself before a gatekeeper, experienced a profound realization. They had all been complicit in the culture of disrespect. They looked at Ethan with new eyes. He was no longer the obstacle. He was the essential guardian, the linchpin that held the security perimeter together. The procedures they had previously treated as arbitrary annoyances were suddenly treated with absolute respect. Cassandra, deeply intrigued by the quiet man's immense control, requested a temporary moment of his time, pulling him aside for a private conversation. A radical gesture, as CEOs rarely confer with frontline staff. She asked him not about his fighting skills, but specifically about his training in conflict resolution. "Your movement was designed to control, not to injure. How do you instill that level of discipline and restraint?" she asked, her focus sharp and genuine. Ethan responded by outlining the philosophy of tactical de-escalation. The goal is always to reduce the threat level, stabilize the environment, and retain the dignity of both parties. It was about leveraging skill to enforce rules, not flexing power to win a confrontation. He emphasized that the most effective security comes from predictable procedure and immediate non-aggressive intervention. "Discipline," he explained, "is what allows you to choose the minimum viable response, even when anger or pressure demands maximum force." Intrigued, Cassandra requested that he develop and lead an immediate conflict control and protocol enforcement training for the entire management team, starting with Jennings. This was not a suggestion, it was a mandate. The immediate training session, held later that day, was unforgettable. Jennings, still visibly shaken and humiliated, was forced to stand and listen as Ethan calmly explained the 7 principles of maintaining physical and verbal distance. The shift was remarkable. The CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company was taking remedial lessons from the man she had mocked minutes earlier, all because of his unwavering commitment to his job description. The management team sat in stunned silence as Ethan demonstrated how their habitual impatience and entitlement directly created physical and systemic vulnerabilities. Jennings was a visual object lesson in the cost of arrogance. The atmosphere in the secure zone gradually softened. The aggressive, take a shortcut culture that Cassandra had fostered began to be actively scrutinized. Everyone understood that from now on the line was not negotiable. The integrity of the procedure, championed and enforced by the quiet single dad, was now the highest priority. The gatekeeper's simple, steady presence had become the company's ultimate lesson in professionalism. Days later, having absorbed the undeniable lesson of the security gate incident, Cassandra Vance presented Ethan Thorne with a formal proposal. She offered him the newly created role of Director of Corporate Security and Protocol Training, a high-level, flexible position with a significant salary increase, full benefits, and the specific authority to retrain the entire management staff in procedural adherence and conflict mitigation. Ethan politely and firmly refused the promotion. "I appreciate the offer, Madam CEO," he said, holding the high-level job description, "but my life demands stability and presence for my daughter. I cannot commit to the travel or the executive hours required for that title. My commitment is here, at the front line, where procedure matters most." However, just as he had done in the jet hangar crisis, Ethan did not refuse influence. "I only require one thing," he stipulated, "the formal authority to audit and enforce security protocols across all departments, regardless of managerial rank, and the absolute guarantee that my work at this gate will never again be minimized or circumvented due to impatience. I need the backing of your position to protect the sanctity of mine." Cassandra, having learned her lesson about titles and true value, instantly accepted the condition. She understood that Ethan wasn't avoiding responsibility. He was protecting his core principles and his commitment to his family. He needed predictable hours and a low-profile life, but he insisted on high-profile authority. She formalized his role as the protocol guardian, a title without a massive office, but with absolute power to enforce the rules and audit managerial compliance. A company-wide policy, dubbed the Thorn Mandate, was immediately implemented. It established that any frontline security or maintenance personnel had the institutional backing to halt operations if a critical procedure was being breached, with zero fear of retaliation. The old culture of bullying and corner-cutting was replaced by a new focus on meticulous, safe, and respectful process. The policy was enforced immediately, starting with Manager Jennings's mandatory 6-week compliance review. Ethan Thorne returned to his post at the security gate, quietly monitoring the flow of traffic, logging his notes in his leather journal, and greeting familiar faces with a calm nod. The journal, once a symbol of his supposed inefficiency, was now viewed with reverence, a testament to the vigilance that had saved the company from its own arrogance. He was still the single dad gatekeeper, fulfilling his primary role with quiet dignity. But the perception of him had changed forever. No one, not the engineers, not the managers, and certainly not the CEO, ever referred to him as just a gatekeeper again. They saw the unwavering discipline behind the simple ID scanner, the elite skill behind the calm posture, and the father's commitment that anchored his professionalism. The entire team had learned the most critical lesson of their careers. Respect is not granted by title, it is earned by discipline. Authority doesn't come from the loudest voice. It comes from the quietest, most unyielding adherence to principle. The entire facility was now guarded, not by steel and glass alone, but by the immovable integrity of the man who chose to stand at the very front line. The order of the day was now dictated by discipline, not by power. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to TT Healing Tales. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.